Um, it's such a joy to be with you this morning. Thank you for having me. Um, in kind of celebration of the work of Crosslight and the partnership between Ascension and the charity that I lead, Crosslight Advice. As I mentioned before, Crosslight celebrated its 15th birthday just this year, and 5 years since we had the partnership with Ascension starting. And it's just been so humbling seeing the work here grow with the support of so many of you in this church, and indeed volunteers from the local community who have come into the church to help with this work. Um, I think the fact that we are celebrating our 15th anniversary is a real sign of God's faithfulness, because when I started this work originally, it was only supposed to be a 6-month project when I was between jobs in the city. That plan didn't quite work out as intended at the time, which is maybe just as well, as today we operate as a charity across about 30 locations in London and the South, and as far west as Swindon, actually, and of course, including here in Ascension. And our mission today is the same as it was 15 years ago when we started, to work in and through the local church with the support of the local community to lift people out of poverty and help them build a better future. But I wonder what goes through your mind when I talk about being in debt. Overspending, perhaps? Maxing out credit cards, buying stuff you can't really afford? To be honest, I think before I got involved in this work, before I started Crosslight, that's exactly what I would have thought. But as Tim was mentioning just now, the truth is that the people we see aren't in debt because of things they've bought. They're struggling because of basic bills they can't afford to pay. Half of the clients that we see have had to go without meals before they come and seek our help. A third can't afford to keep a roof over their head. Around 3/4 of the clients we see have ongoing physical or mental health problems. And perhaps most heartbreakingly of all, our advisors and volunteers regularly hear clients speak about taking their own lives because they feel they have no hope. It's scarcely believable in 21st century Britain, but it's our day-to-day reality. A few years ago, I was listening to a radio documentary about the famous choral work, The Messiah by Handel. I'm very cultured when it comes to that kind of thing. Um, and my ears pricked up when I heard that the first ever performance of The Messiah in 1742 was a charity concert for the provision of debt relief. In Handel's day, of course, debtors used to be thrown in jail, and the radio program had dug out a court record from the time of one Matthew Thomas, a 25-year-old illiterate man who had lost his job as a labourer when he'd fallen ill. And after his bills, he was surviving solely on cereal grains and food handouts and had run up debts just to survive. But that's 1742, right? Well, no, I made that bit up, because Matthew Thomas, not his real name, literally surviving on cornflakes and about to be evicted from his home, is one of our clients. As is the working mum with 2 young children whose husband walked out on her, leaving her with huge debts. When she came to see us, her son had been sleeping on the floor for the past 2 years because she couldn't afford a bed, and the family hadn't eaten a proper meal for several days. And the young student who fell pregnant at college and with no family to support her was eventually found temporary housing, having been discovered by the police sleeping in a bin shelter some 7 months into her pregnancy. Struggling with her mental health and other illnesses, she was facing eviction from her temporary housing and very aggressive bailiffs. These are our clients. These are people that come through the doors of Ascension to see the incredible team here. Each of them different, each of them struggling, feeling lost, not knowing which way to turn, feeling powerless and alone. They are not spendthrifts or work shy. They are individuals, I believe, made in the image of God, whose personal circumstances, by and large, have forced them into a position that they cannot get out of by themselves. And it's our tremendous privilege to be able to support them back on their feet and to do so in and with this church. The Old Testament reading that we've just heard might be a familiar story to many of us, but I chose it because it's actually a really good illustration of the journey that our clients go through. You see, debt and financial difficulty can affect anyone, whatever our position or status. We heard in verse 1 that the widow's husband was one of Elisha's own party, so clearly a man of some status. And whilst the majority of people we support are very vulnerable and on very low incomes, actually that needn't be true for everyone, particularly at this time of rising costs and greater levels of uncertainty. Any of us can all too easily find ourselves on the edge. You may have heard the story of a lady who gets into a taxi and after a few minutes of driving starts to get a little worried that the driver is taking her in the wrong direction. So very politely she leans over and taps the driver on the shoulder to get his attention, at which point the driver lets out an almighty scream, swerves across the road and crashes into a bus. Slightly battered and bruised, the driver is very apologetic and said, I'm terribly sorry. Actually, today is my first day as a taxi driver. And so having someone leaning over and tap me on the shoulder from the rear really freaked me out, because for the last 25 years, I've been driving a hearse. That was a slow burner, isn't it? No one plans to fall into debt. It's a shock and can often send our lives into a spin, just like the taxi driver. And for most people, there's an external trigger. In our Bible story, it was the death of the widow's husband. But there are many causes: illness, unemployment, domestic abuse. Sadly, we're seeing significantly increasing numbers of women escaping domestic violence. Indeed, debt may well be affecting someone here today. It may be affecting someone you know and love, and it can be a very frightening place to be. In the Bible story, the widow's children were being taken into slavery, but even today, being in debt can feel like a form of captivity. The worry and stress of being in financial difficulty robs us of our dignity. It causes us to close down and look inwards. It stops us from flourishing. And every day we see the consequences of that writ large in the lives of the people we support in terms of mental health issues, family breakdown, ill health, and the utter sense of powerlessness that many are made to feel. One of the earliest Christian theologians, a chap called Irenaeus, wrote that the glory of God is reflected in human flourishing, echoing the words of Jesus when he said he came to bring life in all its fullness. The truth is that our clients aren't flourishing. Many of them are barely surviving. All too often, our clients tell us that we are the first, sometimes the only person they've been able to talk to about their problems. How do you tell your partner that you might be facing eviction? How do you explain to your children why there's no food? It's one of the most difficult things anyone will have to do. The widow in the story from the Bible passage had debts presumably going back over a period of time, but she only called to Elisha right at the end when the creditor was threatening her children. Too many people struggle alone, and they often hit rock bottom before they feel able to ask for help. People like Habiba, for example, a single mum with 2 young children living in a one-bedroom flat just a few miles from here. When her husband walked out on her, she'd built up rent arrears, trying to juggle work as a part-time cook with looking after her young children, and she was about to be evicted from her home. She told us that she regularly went without food so that her children could eat. She wrote to us saying, "None of us could stop crying. My children were terrified they would have to live on the streets. One morning, I woke up and my tongue was stuck. Words just wouldn't come out." She had literally become voiceless. But even when she could speak, no one was listening until she came to see the team at Crosslight. "I felt that I was in the sea and just about to drown," she wrote. "You rescued me." One of the most heartbreaking notes I've received came from a lady who had suffered the most appalling abuse over many years and was struggling with mental health issues which were compounding her debts, who wrote simply, "You are the only source of love or anything positive in my life." Where have we gone wrong as a society that a debt charity is the only source of love in someone's life? But also, what a privilege for us and for the church to become a part of her life and to demonstrate love. Because, of course, as Tim used my favorite word, there is hope. Our motto for Crosslight comes from a verse in the Bible, and it's restoring dignity, renewing hope. The widow in our Bible story took the hardest step of all when she asked for help. And like many of our clients, I'm sure it took courage. But look at Elisha's reaction. He didn't moralize, he didn't judge. The very first words out of his mouth were, "How can I help?" I'd love to share this email that we received literally on Thursday, so 4 days ago. This comes from a lady. She writes, "My name is Amy. I was diagnosed with epilepsy at the age of 21, just before I graduated. Since then, life has changed in ways I've never expected. My condition has left me vulnerable and unable to manage many daily tasks. The constant adjustments to my medication bring side effects that are often brutal and unpredictable. Because of this, I haven't been able to work while my seizures remain uncontrolled. During this time, I've fallen into debt, and each morning I would wake up filled with fear and anxiety, unsure of what the day would bring. The weight of it all felt life-changing and at times unbearable. When I reached out to Crosslight for support, I did so with little hope. I've grown used to people using my disability against me. I was expecting nothing different this time. But I was completely blown away. From the very first call, Chris, who's sitting here, Chris at Crosslight treated me with dignity and respect. He worked alongside me, never belittling or judging. He listened to every word, truly heard my struggles, and helped me find a way forward when I felt completely lost. His empathy and respect were so genuine. People like this are so rare. Nikki, the manager, was just as incredible. It felt like talking to an old friend. She made me smile for the first time in ages, lifting the stress and fear that had weighed me down. With Nikki and Chris by my side, I felt unbreakable. She writes, "This is what our future should be like. Honest, genuine people who care deeply about others. I could write a book about my gratitude, but there isn't enough space. People like Chris and Nikki are proof that hope and happiness still exist in the world." I got quite choked when I read that. Amy says it more eloquently than I ever could. Because at Crosslight here at Ascension, we have the great privilege of meeting so many different people from all walks of life who entrust us with their situations. And as Tim was saying, we'll do all sorts of technical things to help them. We'll advise them on their debts. We'll negotiate with creditors. We'll hold back bailiffs. We'll go to court to prevent evictions. We'll take benefit appeals to tribunals. All these kind of things that will generally do everything in our power to resolve their difficulties. But you know what? That may get somebody out of a hole, which, don't get me wrong, is pretty fantastic. But that's not what changes lives. Our currency is hope. A hope born from a God who loves every single one of our clients without condition. And when I reflect on what really makes the difference in the lives of our clients, it's the determination of our team to take each client by the hand and not let go. It's a relationship which supports our clients through the journey side by side. For me, that is the church. Of course, our clients don't usually come into a church, many of them. Indeed, one client told me recently that they were surprised that a church would help someone like them, which broke my heart, if I'm honest. So for us, and I know for you here at Ascension, it's more than just about talking about love. It's about trying to model it in a very practical way. Who is my neighbor? The young lawyer famously asked Jesus in the gospel story. In our own small way, the wonderful team here try to answer that question every day. And the good news is we can all play a part. The widow in our story relied not just on Elisha, but also on her neighbours. It was a community effort. They all rallied round her, collecting jars for her oil and no doubt giving her help and encouragement along the way. What jars do you have, I wonder? So if there is anyone here who is struggling with debt, please do reach out. There is hope. Or you may want to join one of our money skills workshops, which we run periodically, both in person and online. Everyone is welcome, whatever your financial situation. But if you would like to sign up to become an individual supporter, or indeed train to be a volunteer in this work, we'd love to talk to you about that. Because although our Bible story ended in a miracle, it first required people to act. And that's something I think we can all do. And when we step up, I think that's when God steps in. I remember many years ago hearing the story of a small girl at preschool who was very intently drawing a picture when one of the teachers came over and said, "What are you drawing?" To which the girl eagerly replied, "I'm drawing a picture of God." And the teacher was going, "That's fantastic, but of course nobody knows what God looks like." To which the little girl very solemnly replied, "Well, they will in a minute." That's my vision for Crosslight. I know that's Marcus's vision too, that when those in need come into this place, into this church, whatever their background, whatever their faith experience, when they meet with our advisors, perhaps have a coffee and a cake at the cafe, that our clients might be able to glimpse something of the image and love of God. Amen.